Hello, hello, hello. Coming up those steps, I was having total flashbacks to about 2 weeks ago, steps like that in my backyard. We're not a successful interlude. I'm now riding a scooter and really thinking about how we then take information in for our lives. So of course, after I fell, my family picked me up and put me down on a chair a little more comfortable than this. And I immediately did what? I went to Google. What do I do? How do I know if it's a bad sprain? What's going on? And even when the lab results came in from my x-ray and I saw a lovely break across my ankle, learned a lot about ankle physiology, I then immediately went to Google, and Google then would show me what other people's ankles look like. So I want to talk about how we get information in, creative or no, to make decisions and discovery in organizations, and how founders and organizations, and hopefully all of you, can build this on purpose versus the crappy defaults that you're going to be getting in the systems. So I spend a lot of my time in the front of the room talking, but I love to be in the back of the room. I love to be asking the speakers on a panel all sorts of things they don't want to talk about. So back in April, there was a great conference at the Television Academy, and I'm part of the Emerging Media Peer Group. And I asked the people on the panel who were talking about AI in production, and I said, so are you designing tools so that people can work together better? Not just to capture what's going on for copyright, for IP, to make sure it has some human components, but so people actually can work together better, not just as great creative teams. I got no answer for the front of the room. But in the back of the room, I barely got to a cup of coffee when engineers came up to me and said, I'm working on this full time at Name Major Studio, which they shouldn't have named Major Studio. But listening to people saying how they're trying to build programs and platforms for people to create together better always has me inspired. Same week, I'm at another conference, too many conferences. This one's an AI conference, and it had military contractors up on the panel talking about cybersecurity. And my question from the back of the room was, what are you doing about search engines and your executives? Because they're all concerned about, can our data get out? And my question is, how are your leaders getting information to make decisions in this world now of generative engine optimization and the flood of bad content coming in? No answer for the front of the room. Back of the room was an hour of cocktails with the panel talking about what they couldn't talk about from the front of the room. That this is a really major issue, what the food chain is, what the information is coming to leaders to think about in this AI world, how to make major decisions. I'm Dr. Johnson. I am a boundary spanner, and I'll come back to that toward the end about why that's so important. But I am a blend of different sectors. I'm that weird person in the room who's done 10 different jobs over time. So I had a decade in media banking at Bank of America, financing M&A for new technologies in media. Saw way too many schemes and scams, but also a lot of change from the inside. I then was at UCLA for 23 years, about 10 of it at UCLA Anderson. I have someone I know from way back then here as well. But working in both the Applied Management Research Program as well as recreating the Entertainment and Media Management Institute, looking at transformations in media and connecting companies together. I then went to the School of Music, the Herb Alpert School of Music, and for 12 years was there looking at the changes in technology and music and how we work together in music, connecting students and industry and technology. 23 years was a lot. So, but in overlap, I started back in 2005 a program now, which is now called Rethink Next, that combines creativity, creative work, doing anything from some of the first YouTube channels in 2005, concerts, music albums, virtual reality platforms for museums, and most recently spending about a year mostly with creative companies and higher ed companies looking at the impact of AI. So I, as a human boundary spanner, connect lots of ideas in industries and ask lots of questions. So I've been asking questions where the next big change is going to be when it comes to people using AI in organizations. And even if you looked at the press this month, just in May so far, we have OpenAI announcing with 19 other companies, the deployment company, which is going to be having forward engineers coming into your companies to help you do AI. And they've raised $4 billion already around this issue. And Anthropic, not to be left behind, has launched a joint venture with all of these organizations to bring engineering into your companies, into your ideas and your work. Interesting, an investment option. I love to invest money, but I'm more interested in the shared knowledge layers. How do we know how to work together in an AI world? So there's lots of things starting to bubble up in this area. Pinecone last month announced a intercompany knowledge layer product so that if you're working on AI and you're working on AI and we have a light layer on the top that we can then share sort of knowledge and context together. SAP, trying to get into that scheme, also ended up buying a company to be able to go into connecting all of its platforms into agentic AI. And I'm a fangirl for Andrew Karpathy, who's just joined Anthropic, but he launched not that many weeks ago an LLM wiki in GitHub that had, I think we're now up beyond 50,000 users pick it up to build their own knowledge systems. So I want to kind of check in before we get much further on. AI users in the room? AI people who like ChatGPT? AI people who can't stand ChatGPT? Claude users? Perplexity? People who have made their own agents? People who are responsible for other people making their own agents? We have a couple hands up in the room. So one of the challenges, though, is that we are building separately. A lot of us are building little tiny empires of information. And what's happening that has me quite angry is the default is crappy for all of this. That the discovery that you are seeing using AI tools in your organization is your discovery is being narrowed by the system. I'll go into that. And then leaders need to figure out how to create unique ways, and we've heard some great examples on our prior speakers about ways to combine innovative combinations, art and science, looking at different cross-border work. A lot of the tools are trying to get us to think the same and take us down the same pathways. And organizations need to think about how do I make our systems create variety. I'm going to pose it in 3 different buckets. The first, known to some as AI slop, is the flood. That there has been a massive amount by those of us having access professionally or personally to generative AI are making everything known to man, right? That we're creating Trump and the Pope in a wrestling fight. We're creating all sorts of false images, creating press releases, creating 20,000 web pages for a single company in a couple weeks. The flood has been massive with this both AI created, but even just process accelerated method. So the web has filled. Google has had to figure out what to do with all this content. So we've had an explosion of content into the traditional pipelines. Deezer, think of Spotify, Europe. Deezer reports that they're getting about 75,000 new tracks per day that are AI generated. 75,000, and that's 44% of their daily ingests of songs. Even 2 years ago, we had created more new music since the beginning of the pandemic than all of the time before. The amount of volume of just music is staggering. There's now 3.5 million self-published books, up 38% since 2024. And a flood of magazines, newsletters, and journal submissions, either AI accelerated or just written that way. And for one major social science journal, their submissions were up 19% in 2024, and then another 27% last year. So the volume of stuff has gone up magically and gigantically, but the volume of business and revenue that these companies, these platforms are building on hasn't. So they have to deal with this mass volume of things, including AI-generated bug reports, right? So you're trying to work even a piece of software or an open source tool, and you're now being pelted by mixed quality updates, even in bugs. So what's a system to do? A system created pre-filters. So if you use AI overviews, that you are having the primary sources that you never really see, and now there's a filter that comes up before you get the filtered output. So it happens now with AI search in the LLMs. They take your question, and you've poured your heart out. You haven't done the 2.7 average words that people put in a Google search. You possibly talked about, well, I fell last 2 weeks ago, and I tried this, and now my ankle is broken. Or it could be even more verbose answers that you put into it as to figure out what the heck you think you're doing. It then breaks them into subqueries, and then it takes a look at, of the source, the experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, but not the value of the output. And then figures out a synthesis of 2 to 5 answers. Wait. That's not reality? That's not an answer with any validity at all? Yes. So Google search still dominates, but they now give you an AI overview, the same synthesized top view. Depending on the topic, 13 to 30% of all queries, but if it's health information, it's 88%. You will end up getting an AI overview as a result, a synthesized answer, again, without it saying, is this truth? Users then have stopped clicking these answers, so we are now having about 60% on average of 0-click searches. So I have a company, I have people looking for things and doing things. They are searching, getting a synthesized answer, and probably not clicking to see where the heck it came from. And that's just on average. Another interesting part, we have our faith in Google. But now there's only about 20% of similarities between what a Google search would have and what's showing up on AI overviews, Perplexity, Gemini, blah, blah, blah. So what is truth? When you and your team and organization are looking for a new collaborative product, an area you know nothing about, where does this stuff come from? And I talk at least weekly to different groups, and almost no one realizes this is what's under the hood, that they're looking out for all sorts of daily information now. So between the flood of information and the flattening, we now have a real narrowing of what's walking in your door and your team's door. So we are offloading. It's called cognitive offloading. We are giving these tools the cognitive skills we used to have because it's simpler, it's easier. There's this flood. We need clarity of information. But it now is trying to force certainty and a certain sounding answer to stuff that might be ambiguous, fuzzy, multidisciplinary, and you may not see it. So it's being pre-filtered by a filter you did not design and you can't see. This will get creepier as it goes on. I'm sorry. Okay. So it's going to be filtered before you ever see it, not just with rules you don't know, but rules for truth you don't know. So since November, LinkedIn launched 360 Brew. So if you're on LinkedIn, you may have noticed that your stuff's not being shown as much. LinkedIn decided not just to have, well, this is the percentage of people of your friends group or followers that should see your stuff. They're now saying, well, here's what Gigi said, and here's her job descriptions of what she's done. If it doesn't line up, they will not show it. So people who have diverse interests are finding year over year about a 47% decrease in the amount of time that LinkedIn is then connecting them with the people they already know. Do you want to hear from your diverse friends? Or do you want to hear from people who are saying the same thing as they've been doing forever, right? They also all have bias toward recent sources. So if something is less than 3 to 6 months old, they will share it. If it's older, they will not be sharing it at all. They also are taking that search you inquire about connecting it up, except for Anthropic, connecting it with ad networks, so that search you made, similar to Google, will now chase you across the web in the other websites you go to. They're not necessarily showing the entire long question you gave, but they are sharing that context with advertisers and connecting it up across the web. So now you've asked questions, looking for something that maybe brings something new into your organization or decisions, and you are getting not just a pre-filtered bucket of information, but it's now going to chase you down. There's also a lot of research. MIT's recent research looking at 24,000 queries found that this whole process now gets you lower variety and fewer long-tail sources. So we're talking a lot about what is the variety we have, how do we create variety, how do we remix the unexpected, and instead we're getting stuff that's wrong. So 80% of people follow an AI's wrong answer anyway, leading to much worse performance, new research on that. And then if you actually ask an AI to be at the edge of what it knows, its correct solutions drop by about 19%. But it sounds so confident by design, right? It sounds like the authority. It never says, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily hedge. And so you need to really learn to examine the input for your creative, business, collaborative decisions. So what you've got, I call it the breadth penalty. If you're a diverse source, you will not be heard. The LLMs want narrow specialists, consistent focus, and an established long-term identity. They don't want cross-domain thinking. They don't want intellectual transitions or boundary spanners. So we've got really a system, though, that you're probably using AI somewhere in your discovery platforms. That 82% of VCs show in research this past year, they use AI for deal discovery. They're not using it for decision making largely because they see some of this stuff happening. 80% of physicians' offices are using AI, though mostly for documentation and processing at this phase. But we're seeing the AI in personal search is creating information anchors that are redundant, that are not diverse thinking, that AI in content creation is causing a flood, and an AI is narrowing to expert answers and missing cross-discipline voices. And then you've got all your team members. So we're doing individual AI, and you can't see into the process how the people you're working with are thinking, where they're getting information, right? And so a lot of people are hiding. There's lots of research that about 60% of people are hiding some of the AI they're using and what they do. But teams then don't share their discovery patterns. Now, everyone individually is getting pre-filtered, and then the things that come together then are a narrow band of information. And there's lots of interesting research right now in this phase that AI can be structured for teams to work well. Done right, idea expander. Done wrong, a convergence machine. So what comes out in bulk? Research is finding that about increase of about 5% in the similarity of work that is done in fields and in organizations, and that disruptive ideas are becoming less unique and less disruptive across a wide swath of industries. You can take a look at scientific papers, patents, legal cases, music, and visual art in volume. Good news, sad news, frustrating news? So what can you do to make your own unique discovery systems? So you can look for ways to build weak signals that are not coming through AI, or ask AI to do weak signals. I built about a year ago a GPT in ChatGPT that is Ms. Mischief Maker. And her whole job when I trigger her is to give me mischievous answers to anything I ask her. So sometimes I'll put serious work in there and she'll come back and give me all these flippant weird answers, and some of them are like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought that way. How do you build your own Ms. Mischief Maker into the way you and your team work? And can you think about it that you want to have a discovery method that's not just what everybody else is doing by default from using similar discovery systems? You want boundary spanners. Now, I know in this room you are boundary spanners to probably be at this conference, be meeting new people. A good boundary spanner has strong external information links and can translate it internally in their organization. If you don't have enough of those, go find them. They carry that messy cognitive map of change that's happening, all those little signals that you wouldn't see otherwise. It could be uncertainty and conflict and other puzzle pieces that get disappeared in an AI search or an AI tracking system, and they don't then collapse and oversimplify the result. So is collision important? We've been hearing about it for the past several presentations, but there's two famous collisions in biosciences. I, of course, have to grab notes on this. So CRISPR started in a yogurt factory. In 2007, researchers for a Danish yogurt company found certain bacteria developed resistance to viral infection. They put it in Science. Researchers then working on RNA biology at Berkeley read the paper and said, wow, this is a gene editing tool in the making, and created then the core aha that really moved them towards CRISPR. Ozempic, of course, didn't start out as Ozempic. It started from decades of endocrinology research without any idea that it was also going to be helping heart disease, liver disease, and kidney disease. So there's research that has come out of the University of Chicago Knowledge Lab that looked at tens of millions of papers. I'm assuming maybe using AI. Sorry, it was in 2019. It was using some algorithm. But took a look that most breakthroughs occur when problems in one field are unexpectedly solved by researchers from a distant other. And the improbability of the combination predicts up to 50% of the likelihood of an outsized positive impact. How do you build that into your company if the front door are individuals doing AI search to even get the ideas from which to work? Now, bioscience has already built this because there's been an awareness in this field that you can connect disparate ideas. There was a seminal study in 1986 looking at fish oil, blood viscosity, and Raynaud's disease. That started 40 years of purpose-built infrastructures to find exactly what these general systems of analysis miss. But to this industry, lots of people are trying to now sell it AI solutions to help do this faster, not necessarily with more diversity. I get very kind of paranoid and creepy on this next part. Who owns the way you now have set up to discover? If you're in a large organization or your own small shop, this gets to be a really interesting question. When you use an AI tool for discovery, what patterns does it learn about the way you work? Who owns that learning? Do you own it? I'm very nerdy, as you might tell already, but I went and pulled my export from ChatGPT and Claude, which gives me a couple of years now of usage, comes out as massive JSON files, and I'm running it through a whole analysis to see how my thought processes have changed over the time and how I interact, how I question, how that's changed, how it crosses the platforms. You don't need to be that nerdy, but you can think about, are you leaving this for someone else to know how you work and how you think, and can you harvest your own thinking to figure out how do I do this better? However, this is the creepy part. Every enterprise AI interaction is owned by the company. You can't take your data out. It has to be kept by most company governance in a protected space, and it is legally discoverable. Don't investigate cheating on your spouse with the AI at work. I've got stories about that. So the data reveals the cognitive processes of how we work, which could be something great. And it could be a very large surveillance and stalking problem. So you need to really think about, am I taking what I'm learning to do and build, and am I growing from it, or am I feeding a company or systemic machine with my thought processes? This is really just starting to be a surveillance issue, but also I've got my really fabulous way I work, do I want to be giving it away? So build your own systems. I work with organizations and individuals to think about starting a discovery dig. Where the heck do you get information on a weekly basis? Is it talking to people over coffee? Is it a flood of emails and spending an hour in the morning sorting through stuff you already know but have to read? Do you do anything to bring diversity into the system? Where do you save things? Do you read things you know nothing about? I love going to conferences I know nothing about and meeting people and adding that into my mental bucket and relationships, right? And some of them, am I collecting people? Think of all the people you've met here. Other than, let's find each other on LinkedIn. Are you finding ways to connect and follow? And LinkedIn is a terrible vehicle, and you're giving your relationships away. Sorry, that's a whole nother talk. Signal garden. Can you now take the things you are harvesting and say, what do I feed? What do I water? What do I prune? Am I using my time well on discovery and my attention? Can my team do it differently and together and figure out not just, well, Joe's in charge of reading the trade publications, but make sure that everybody has their filters coming in with the people they know? And then are there things you want to have as an accelerator, weak signals you're finding not in your field that you can move forward on? When I talk to entertainment companies, individuals are doing this. The company is concerned about what goes into the IP. And in some cases, can we protect the process if we end up having this product to be sold? So how do we design unique human, AI, human discovery systems? And I say this because the knowledge system question, if I'm working with you and you and you and you, there's a systemic layer we could be learning from each other on. How do we put together systems where we can thrive and not be sitting in our pipes? So it might be I build knowledge systems and uncertainty discovery systems, but I'm going to have an AI stack and I'm going to have a human edge. How do I put these things together? Multi-human, multi-large language model. What is your organization's back of the room? How do you connect all the pieces, not just at the formal front of the stage, to get people to talk to each other about what's possible? Is it built deliberately, or are you just running from the front? And is the cognitive layer built for knowledge retrieval or collective understanding? Build a deliberate system that understands what's going on, not just knowledge tools. So come join me in the back of the room. Cup of coffee, glass of wine. It doesn't matter, but feel free to talk to more people here and figure out how you can reach out to them afterwards, because there are people here, many walks of life, but put that in your weekly work, in your team's work, and talk about it. Who are you meeting? Where are great new ideas coming from? And rethink how you use AI search. So redesign how bets and breakthroughs happen. I appreciate folks have been too much density on the slides, but if you scan that, it will take you to the page where you can click and end up with the slides at the end of it. And this is what worries me and what I'm building around right now, so very glad to talk to people. Thank you for listening to my conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. Before we let you go, does anybody have any questions? Any questions for Dr. Johnson? We got some questions on that side of the room. Hold on.
And thank you for the tech support team. You guys have been very fabulous today.
Hi, Gigi. It's Marvy.
Hi, Marvy.
Hello. So, I am a one-person marketing lady here at UCLA.
Yes.
And I do everything. I do everything from social media to writing the press releases to running this conference to blah, 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 blah. I want to use AI, but I have no idea where to start. I think I wrote a press release and I was like, oh, clean this up, Gemini. And I took what it suggested and I was like, okay, but how else can I employ AI, especially at academia, where someone like a marketing person is usually a person of one, maybe two if you're lucky?
We could take another hour on this question, and I'm doing a lot of this with groups, anything from, because this is a big question for most people. Even if they are using it, they've stumbled into ChatGPT, they've stumbled into Claude, they've stumbled into Gemini, hopefully not Copilot. Copilot just really sucks. And they kind of get a little ways into it, and the way these things are built is they've digested vast amounts of information off the internet, largely legally and illegally. And so they're going to give you, and then they've been trained by generally people not making a high amount per hour questioning the data. And so they have learned from that to give you an average expected answer. So if you give it an average expected question, help you with this press release, et cetera, and you feed it the press release, you're going to get like an average intern's result. And there are ways to then say, okay, you are my collaborative partner. I have essentially, Benedict Evans has the phrase, infinite interns. You now have infinite interns to train. Can you figure out what you can feed it? So a good press release looks like X. Here's an example of a good press release. Here is an example of articles about good. We magically think it must be brilliant and know everything, right? And so feeding it context, here's my job, here's what I've done, here's the event. And you don't have to type it in, you can connect things into it. That after you do this, sadly, a few times, you and it will be able to say, okay, I gave it this direction I needed to tune. We got one great press release. What did we do? And let's write that pattern up, and then we can do it again. So in many ways, it's a repetition machine that up front, it can take a lot of time to get these conversations in it going. Again, you're giving it your expertise, sticking other people's expertise in, iterating. So over the weekend, working on these slides, I wanted to replace a few of the images. So I went and talked with Codex, part of ChatGPT, and I said, I want to improve my slide deck. Here's what I would love if it would do. Take in the slide deck, read the whole slide deck, think about the context of the slide deck. Here's my design specs. Here is my description of this event. I would like ideas for slides 2, 5, and 6 to fix the images. And let me know what you come up with. And I've been playing, though, with Codex for a while. I came back from a cup of coffee, and there were my images put together. So part of it is figuring out that it doesn't know stuff. You've got to train it, feed it, train it, feed it. Again, you're giving it your expertise. And then you can use it to build things over again for you as a slightly smarter intern. But we can talk.
Okay, we'll talk.
Coffee.
Yeah, any other questions?
I'm curious, what's your opinion on the vibe coding revolution? So using AI to generate code, basically.
So I've been doing it for about a year. And Karpathy, who I mentioned, is the guy who coined the term vibe coding. A lot of people, it's again, you can ask it questions and get it to do things. Coming up the third week of June, Kaggle and Gemini have a week-long vibe coding free boot camp that you could do. And some of it is, I have a problem. How can I build something to fix my problem? And then iterate about what could I actually design in parts and pieces. The many challenges of vibe coding is that it's generally a solo jam. I am doing something to fix my problem. My coworkers have no idea what I'm doing or how to fix it. And most of them get about 80% done and give up. So you have people using their time to explore their problems, but they're getting to like an 80% completed solution to work for themselves and getting frustrated, and that's the hard part. It also sometimes opens massive security doors at organizations that they will stick on the various API keys for their organizations, and then they got data leakage. They have all sorts of potential problems out that door. Done well, that you can take small problems and make them no longer small problems for you. I've been vibe coding and building all sorts of things for my small company and some of my clients. And one of my adult kids is a major consultant, and she spends probably 10% of her time vibe coding for her clients to solve the little problems that keep them from getting to the big stuff. But I love, it's a real pain in the ass, but that Kaggle program changed the way I think. And I'm 63. If I can figure this stuff out, gee, gosh, you guys can figure this stuff out. But I'm pro AI, but I'm massively anti the defaults. So do look under the hood for everything and look at everything you can change.
First off, thank you. This is really, I love your perspective on it, so thank you very much. You mentioned that a lot of the models are being trained by people who are finding the average, right? And building out, this is average answer that'll work.
Well, it's predicting the next token set, but that's a whole other geekdom.
Given that, and then you say, you have to use your expertise to guide it. With so much of a younger generation that may not have built that expertise depending on it, do you think we are building an army of just the middle and losing a lot of expertise capability that because these tools are being overly dependent on?
Do we have another hour to answer?
Yeah.
So they're finding, there's lots of research being done in this, a lot of social science and behavioral science research. And they're finding for people who have real expertise, this is a massive accelerator. So whether you're a top film editor, a top radiologist, that you're able to perform at such a higher level because you know what to ask, what to give away, what to bake into the pie. If you talk to a lot of college students, and I have a lot of friends who teach here and other places, the students know ChatGPT, maybe Notebook LM, maybe a couple other things, and they put the thing into it, take it out, and hand it in. So when those folks are getting to their first jobs, and we can argue whether their first jobs are existing or not right now, companies are having those folks come in and go, they're really great in copy and paste, but they can't ask critical questions and maneuver the information. So a lot of people who are teaching full-time are finding the quality of the engagement around the information and the quality of remembering it. If you've done that, you can't remember what you did, so it's not baked into the next class, the next job, and you're becoming a skill jockey. So learning but if you can take, they're called skills with a capital S, other people's patterns now, it's like recipes now for using this stuff, that you can try them, and again, not use those. There's malicious skills out there, which is a whole bad thing. But you can learn from how other people have done things. And it could be a great bridge between people at the company. Show me how you do something. Show me how you do something. And it's baked into the way they then set processes for doing that in AI. But the problem is, when someone leaves, unless you're working together, you have zero idea what the heck they've been doing. It's like having everyone's individual hard drives, right? Like, kind of.
Any other last questions for Dr. Johnson before we wrap up? Anybody else?
Great. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you so much.